We created the Sunulator to help people answer the question, is solar worth it?
Hi, I'm Andrew Redaway from the Alternative Technology Association. This video is on Sunulator, our free solar feasibility calculator. To download Sunulator and obtain other information such as the user guide, please do an internet search on the word Sunulator. This is part of a series that covers material in our standard Sunulator training course, which we've already delivered in several Australian cities. I'll be focusing on the costs section, which is mostly to tell Sunulator how much money we have to spend up front to purchase and install a solar battery system, which will, after it's installed, we'll be getting the benefits of bill savings into the future. So just click on the word costs in the menu off to the left. This is probably the busiest sheet in Sunulator, so we'll be spending a bit of time on this. But once we work through it, it'll hopefully make a bit more sense. So you'll see the several sections. The first section is on financial assumptions. The import tariff is for the grid tariff that you'll be paying or receiving through a retailer. So we've covered this in the previous video on tariffs, how to set up a tariff, and you can see that in the menu under section 3. Now this is where we assign a tariff to each scenario, and I've covered setting up the scenarios in the previous video on section 4 on model. So in this one we've got each column is a different scenario. So we've got a business as usual scenario with no solar or batteries. We've got a 4 kilowatt scenario which just has a solar system with no battery, and then one with a 2 kilowatt hour battery and one with a 5 kilowatt hour battery installed as well. And you can see for all of these it's we're just using the flat rate tariff, which is the simplest type of tariff you can set up. So if we wanted to change that, you just click on it, the drop down, and you can choose one of the 3 tariff types that we saw how to set up in the previous video. If in doubt, just choose the flat rate tariff, and then you can always come back and change it later after you run Sunulator. Now there's also the feed-in tariff on the next row. So the retailer import tariff is for electricity that you're purchasing from the grid when you import from the grid, and the feed-in tariff is for electricity that you export back out to the grid when your solar system is generating more electricity than what you're consuming on site. And this is a dollar per kilowatt hour value. So for each kilowatt hour that we're exporting back out to the grid, we're saying we'll receive 6.7 cents. The next row is the financial discount rate for the consumer. So we said that's 2.5%. Now this can be a little confusing, this number. It's not an actual discount that the consumer will see off any money that they're spending. So it won't be like we're going to buy a solar system for $10,000 minus 2.5%. Instead, it's just a number that gets used when calculating some of the financial statistics, such as the return on investment and the net present value, which we'll cover later on in the results section. And the reason why we need to include a number like this is to take into account the fact that money that we get now or in the next year, say from bill savings, is more valuable to us than the same amount of savings that we might get in 5 or 10 years into the future. So if someone offered you $100 today or $100 in 10 years time, which one would you prefer? Obviously it's better to have the $100 earlier, because you can use it for something. You can pay off debts, or you can invest it in a bank and earn interest on it. So when we're doing our financial calculations, we may be comparing one scenario which has greater returns in the early years and another scenario which has greater returns in the later years. And in that case, we should see better stats for the scenario with early returns, and the discount rate helps us to achieve that. We've chosen a rate of 2.5% because that's roughly about right for a mortgage rate in Australia at the moment. Once you take out the inflation value. Now we're taking out inflation because in Sunulator we're doing everything in today's dollars, so 2016 dollars. I'll come back to that a bit later when we talk about equipment replacement. And a mortgage rate is applicable for the scenarios we're looking at for a household, a residence. If they're going to be if they've got a mortgage and when they're buying their solar and battery system, that's going to come out of their offset account, for example. So it's going to effectively increase their mortgage repayments over the future and until the solar system has paid for itself. There's plenty of websites that will help you get a better understanding of what a discount rate does. Now the horizon is again it just controls how some of the statistics work, the net present value and the internal rate of return calculation. So what this says is we're not going to consider any future savings or costs that occur more than 20 years into the future after the solar battery system is installed. 20 years is probably a good amount of time because the solar panels should still be going at that point. But if, for example, you're in a household situation, if you thought you might be moving in 5 or 10 years and you didn't think that your solar system was going to add any value to the resale price of your house, then you might want to choose a shorter horizon. If it's a business situation, then you might have some guidance on what's the maximum horizon you want to consider when you're investing money. The GST, goods and services tax, pretty standard, 10%, unless we're talking about an entity that pays no GST or effectively gets reimbursed for the GST straight away. In that case, you could reflect that by setting that number to 0. Now, renewable energy certificates can be a little tricky. These are effectively an upfront discount on the cost of a solar system, and that's calculated on the capacity of the solar panels and your location. The battery battery capacity has no impact on the rebate that you get from renewable energy certificates. Now, if it's a small system, less than 100 kilowatts of rated solar capacity, then the renewable energy certificates are called STCs, small technology certificates, and you can claim them as an upfront rebate. It's normally dealt with by the solar installer, so they're able to quote you a cheaper price for your system because they'll be claiming that rebate back from the authorities. If it's a larger system, then you can't claim that as an upfront rebate, so it becomes more complex. And to get the value from that, you'll have to do some paperwork each year to claim some revenue from holding those renewable energy certificates. The deeming period. So if you are going to, if it is a system that's smaller than 100 kilowatts and you're claiming up front, then you're effectively claiming certificates based on the value of 15 years of generation from your system. If it's less than that, then you can change this. And at the start of 2017, we're not going to be able to claim a whole 15 years. It'll reduce to 14. And at the start of 2018, it'll reduce to 13. So the upfront rebates will start to gradually decline each year into the future. So that could be useful to put that in. Right, so we've talked about the financial assumptions that we're going to use in Sunulator. The next two sections are the most important on this sheet, which is how much is the solar system and the batteries going to cost. The first one is the solar system, so it's the panels and the associated equipment, so the inverter, the racking that the panels are bolted onto, the cables, the switches, all that kind of stuff, and the installation as well, the labour, etc. Now in Sunulator we've provided 4 different ways for you to enter in the cost of the solar system, and which one you choose will depend on a few things, like how far into the process are you of purchasing your solar system. If it's early days and you're just doing some early research on solar, then you probably don't have any quotes yet, but you may have some information from a benchmark website. If you're further down the track, then you may have specific quotes to enter in. So that's why you might have different sorts of numbers to put in. Okay, so the first option is we're going to put in $1 capital cost, which is before GST and before renewable energy certificates. So if you had a quote which did not include GST and it did not include that rebate, then this is where you put it in. So it could be $5,000 or $7,000 or whatever. The next option, again, it's before GST and before the rebate, and this is a capital cost per watt. So it might be, $1.70 per watt or $2 per watt. Remember that a watt is a unit of power, so if we're talking about a 4 kilowatt solar system, then that's 4,000 watts of rated power. Moving down, the next option is you're entering a capital cost after GST has been applied and the rebate from the renewable energy certificates. So this is normally what you'd get on a quote from a solar installer. They'd say, okay, this solar system is going to cost you $5,600, and that's inclusive of GST and rebate. So you can just type in this number here. The one we've actually used in this example is the next one, which is the cost per watt, again after renewable energy certificates and GST. And often benchmarks are given like this. So $1.40 we've just got as a sample number for the analysis, but there's a good table which gets published every month from Solar Choice, I think it is. I'll come back and check that later. So you only have to enter in one of these cells for each scenario that actually does have a solar system, and Sunulator will calculate for you what's your overall cost of your solar system after renewable energy certificates and GST. So if we're entering in this top section, then Sunulator will estimate for you how many renewable energy certificates are you eligible for, which depends on the size of your solar system and also your location. If you're in a sunnier location, you become eligible for more STCs, more renewable energy certificates. So that gives you a bigger discount, and it also adds in the GST as well. So you can see in this example, 4 kilowatt solar system, $1.40 per watt, comes to $5,600 for our 3 scenarios, which all have a solar system. Now the next section is similar, but now it's just talking about the batteries and any other bits and pieces required, like switches and cabling and probably a sensor in the meter box or the switchboard, so your battery can know when you're going to be exporting electricity and when you're importing, so it'll know how to control the battery to discharge or charge up at the appropriate times, and it's maybe an enclosure, some sort of mounting equipment, that sort of thing. So again, we've got 4 options, same sort of thing, but now it's not per kilowatt of the panel capacity, it's per kilowatt hour of battery capacity, rated battery capacity. So here we've chosen to enter it in as a cost per kilowatt hour after GST, and we've chosen $1,300. That's just based on some research that we've done, and yeah, if you're trying to get a feel for that, there are some good estimates of estimated recommended retail price on another website. I think that was Solar Quotes, and that's for a whole range of different batteries. Okay, so then we've just got the upfront cost for the entire system, which is the solar side plus the battery side, and that's $5,600 for the system with no battery, and then it's higher for the systems with a small battery and a big battery. The next section is for operational expenses. This is a bit of a grey area. A lot of people with solar panels don't do any maintenance and don't incur any annual costs. But other people and other installers will recommend that you clean the panels maybe a couple of times a year or every year. Maybe get an installer or an electrician to inspect the system every year or two. The cleaning side of things depends a lot on what location you're in. Some people find that their solar panels self-clean in the rain without having to do anything special. Other people find that just because of the prevailing weather and wind and dust and bird poo and all that stuff, they do have to clean their panels from time to time. Inspection, well, it would probably be good just to at least do a visual inspection and see the panels are still bolted down firmly and there's no cables dangling, and obviously just to check your inverter to make sure that it is still generating and appears to be generating the amount of electricity that it should be. So you may decide to allow for some expenses there or not. Now the next one is for equipment replacement. So panels, we're allowing for panels to be replaced every 30 years, which is basically means that it's going to have no effect on our panel replacement will have no effect on our financial calculations, which only go out for 30 years. But the cost of the panel replacement, we've got $1,470 as an example, and that's just in there with a simple formula in Excel. And well, obviously 30 years is sort of crystal ball gazing. Who knows what solar panel technology will look like at that date? But all we've done is said, well, it's the cost of the solar side of the system multiplied by 0.35, so it's basically a third of the solar system cost, and then multiplied by 0.75 to allow for a 25% decrease in solar panel costs. The next 2 lines are for the inverter, and inverters do not last as long as solar panels. They're electrical devices, and you know, like TVs and microwave ovens and all those sorts of things, they do tend to wear out, especially if they're worked hard in hot environments. So we're allowing a 10-year lifespan, so the cost will hit in year 11 after install. And again, we've put just a formula there. So we're allowing for 25% of the solar side of the system, and we're expecting inverter prices to drop a fair bit. So we've allowed for a 50% reduction in the replacement in year 11. Now again, that's in today's dollars. So even though you may be buying an inverter today for, let's say, $1,000, in 10 years' time, depending on the inflation rate, if we go through a period of high inflation, then maybe the same quality inverter would actually cost $1,500. But in Sunulator, we're leaving inflation out of the picture. So if you expect that the same quality inverter would still cost $1,000, but due to manufacturing improvements and technology improvements, it's actually a bit cheaper, then that's what you would allow for. And you wouldn't build in the inflationary factor just from the value of money. And then the next two is similar thing, but now for batteries. Now, battery lifespan in a hybrid solar system where you've got solar panels and batteries and a grid connection is fairly untested at this stage. We haven't seen, they've only really become widely available in the last year or two. So it's a bit debatable about how long you would allow in a calculation like this, but we've put in 10 years. Many of the batteries have a 10-year warranty. Most of the batteries also have some degradation in the battery capacity over time. So you may start off with a battery with a usable capacity of, say, 5 kilowatt hours, but by the end of 10 years it may only have a usable capacity of 4 or 3 kilowatt hours. And that's just due to chemical processes in the battery cells. The chemicals start to break down. You have some effects going on, so the battery can't work to its full capacity that it used to. Now, that's something that we don't model explicitly in Sunulator. So if you do want to allow for that battery degradation, then you can either set a shorter replacement frequency, or you can set a smaller usable capacity up front in the battery section under the model. When you do have to replace your battery, then what's the cost of that going to be? And here we've allowed a formula which is the battery system cost times 42%. So we're expecting about a 60% drop in battery prices after 10 years. But this formula is not protected, so you can overwrite that. You can put in your own formula, or you can just type in a value. If you say, oh no, battery's only going to be $2,000 in year 11, then you can just type that straight in. And the same for the panels and inverter too. Now the next section is only relevant if we're talking about a larger solar system that's 100 kilowatts or greater in rated solar panel capacity. And the reason why it's all greyed out with the cross hatching there is that the solar systems we've entered are smaller than that. But what this system does is it'll be estimating what's your revenue that you'll get every year from redeeming your renewable energy certificates. There's also it also allows for a cost in the paperwork and administration to administer that process to redeem those renewable energy certificates, which is one reason why most solar systems, if they're going on a roof of a building or whatever, they'll try and keep it below the 100 kilowatt level, because of those costs associated with the certificate administration, and also the uncertainty of knowing what price the certificates would be trading for into the future. Okay, so those are the numbers that you should be entering into Sunulator to tell Sunulator about the costs and the financial side of things. Now we'll click on next. Sunulator's original funding for its development was based on providing a tool for community energy projects and community solar projects to help them understand the economic and environmental benefits and feasibility of projects that they might be looking at. So to do that, we've allowed for a few different ownership options. At the moment, the default values in Sunulator is all just consumer owned, but we also have community owned, which is like a power purchase agreement option, where the solar panels are not owned by the electricity consumer who owns the site, the household or the business, but they're owned by another group, like a financing group, and the electricity consumer is paying for electricity that comes out of the solar system through a meter into their business or home. Project financing is like a loan or a lease option. Again, where the building owner, the electricity consumer, does not own the system, and a community retailer is a little different again. So I'm not going to go into these in detail. Please refer to another video if you're interested in that section. Now we'll just click next, and just keep an eye on what happens in the menu over here. So we're currently on 5B, and we've jumped straight over 5C and gone to 5D. And the reason for that is 5C is only relevant if one of your scenarios has a ownership option other than consumer owned. So we're just sticking with consumer owned, where the household or the business that has the solar panels is the one that owns it. They've paid the money up front to install the system, and they'll get the benefits directly off their electricity bill. So this sheet, 5D, is looking out into the future and seeing how some variables may change. The first four columns are all about your contract with your retailer, your tariffs going out into the future for grid electricity, and we've broken that up into components. So there's a fixed portion of your bill, the fixed charge, the energy charge, and a demand charge. And if you're a little hazy on those, you can refer back to the video on tariffs. And then there's the feed-in tariff, which we've just covered in the costs sheet previously. So if we think that our bills are going to be going up, then we can enter in a value here, 1%, 2%, or whatever, which will be cumulative per year. And that's what we've done, and we've based these numbers here on some industry forecasts of what electricity prices might be doing in Sydney. But yeah, you can make your own assumptions, or try a few different values and see how much of a change it would make on your results. The solar bill, that's only relevant if you have the community ownership option, like a power purchase agreement. So I won't cover that here. Panel degradation is the reduction in output of your panels as they get older, which is expected to be about 0.5% per year. And then the section in white over to the right is just the cumulative effect of that. So we can see in year 10 we've got we're saying that the fixed charge it'll be 17% higher than it was in year 1. Pretty straightforward. So we'll just click next. Oh, sorry, before I click next, yeah, we can go all the way down. So yeah, there are some useful functions in Excel, like Control D to fill down after you've selected the whole area that you want to fill down for. So let's click next, and we're ready to run Sunulator. So as you can see, it has taken a bit of attention and a bit of work to enter in all the values that Sunulator requires. But if you're still with me at this point, then congratulations, and I'll save the running of Sunulator for the next video. Thank you.